Archie Moore trained Muhammad Ali. Then he fought Muhammad Ali. Then he stood in George Foreman's corner and prayed that Foreman wouldn't kill Ali. 3 times this man crossed paths with the greatest. And what he told his family about Ali before he died will change the way you see boxing forever. They called him the Old Mongoose. And if you don't know that name, then you don't know boxing the way it was meant to be known. Because Archie Moore didn't just fight in one era. He fought in 3. He watched Joe Louis. He stepped in the ring with Rocky Marciano. And he trained a loud kid from Louisville named Cassius Clay, who would one day become Muhammad Ali. No other fighter in history can say that. Not one. But the story between Archie Moore and Ali isn't what you think it is. Moore was born in Mississippi in 1913. His real name was Archibald Lee Wright. His father walked out on the family before Archie could remember his face. His mother couldn't take care of him, so she sent him to live with an uncle and aunt in St. Louis. He took their last name, Moore, because it was easier than answering questions about why his daddy wasn't around. His uncle Cleveland gave him stability, gave him structure, gave him the only real home he ever knew. And then Cleveland died in a freak accident when Archie was still a teenager. Just like that, the only man who ever stood in as his father was gone. And Archie fell apart. When he ran with gangs, stole copper wire from abandoned houses. His first real theft was stealing 2 oil lamps from his own aunt's home and selling them on the street. You know what he bought with that money? Boxing gloves. The thing that would save his life was bought with stolen money from the woman who raised him. He got caught stealing from a streetcar, and they sent him to reform school in Boonville, Missouri. 22 months. But that's where everything changed. Moore wrote later that reform school was his personal crossroads. The shame of what he'd done to his aunt brought the good she'd built into him back to the surface. He started boxing in the school's gym, knocked out 16 opponents in his first year. And then he spent the next 15 years being denied what he deserved. Moore turned professional in 1935. Won fight after fight, knockout after knockout. But the promoters didn't want to give a black fighter from St. Louis a title shot. One, they made him wait. Made him travel to Argentina and Australia just to get decent fights. Made him prove himself over 200 times before they finally let him fight for the light heavyweight championship in 1952. He was 39 years old. Most fighters are retired at 39. Moore was just getting started. He knocked out Joey Maxim and became champion. Then he held that belt for 10 straight years. The longest reign in light heavyweight history. 132 career knockouts. More than any fighter who ever lived. That record still stands today. And then a 20-year-old kid showed up and changed everything. In 1960, Cassius Clay came to Archie Moore's camp in San Diego. The Louisville sponsoring group thought Moore would be the perfect trainer for their golden boy. Moore had the experience, the knowledge, the ring intelligence. He knew more about boxing than almost anyone alive. But Moore was old school. He believed you earned your place. You washed dishes. You cleaned the gym floors. You showed respect before you threw punches. That's how Moore was raised. That's what reform school taught him. You don't get to skip the hard part just because you think you're special. Clay thought he was special, and he wasn't about to wash anybody's dishes. The kid left, just packed up and went to Angelo Dundee instead. Think about what that felt like for a man like Archie Moore. A man who waited 15 years for his shot. A man who scrubbed floors in reform school and came out the other side, a champion. And this loud kid from Louisville couldn't handle washing a few plates. But Moore didn't hold a grudge. Not yet. Because what happened next put them on opposite sides of the ring. November 15th, 1962, Los Angeles. Moore was 49 years old. He had been fighting professionally for 7 years before Clay was even born. 7 years. That's how wide the gap was between these two men. Clay predicted the outcome the way he always did. Archie Moore must fall in 4. Moore shot back with the only response a man like him could give. He said he'd invented a new punch just for this fight. Called it the lip buttoner. The crowd loved it. But the ring doesn't care about words. Clay was faster than anything Moore had ever seen at heavyweight. The kid moved like water. His jab came from angles that didn't make sense. Moore tried everything. The cross-arm guard, the shoulder roll, the defensive techniques he'd perfected over 3 decades. None of it mattered. Clay put him down 3 times in the 4th round and the referee stopped it. Exactly as Clay predicted. 4 rounds. Not 3, not 5, 4. Moore walked back to his corner and sat down. Almost 50 years old. Just been stopped by a kid who used to be his student. A kid who wouldn't wash dishes in his gym. And the passing of the torch doesn't get more brutal than that. But the story doesn't end there. And this is where it gets complicated. 12 years later, Archie Moore was standing in another corner. George Foreman's corner. Zaire. October 1974. The rumble in the jungle. And on the other side of the ring stood the same man who had knocked Moore out in 1962. Only now, he wasn't Cassius Clay anymore. He was Muhammad Ali. Moore had trained Foreman, taught him the cross-arm guard, weaned the same defensive style that Moore had made famous. He helped turn Foreman into the most terrifying heavyweight since Sonny Liston. 40 wins, 0 losses, 37 knockouts. Foreman didn't just beat people, he destroyed them. And Moore believed with everything in him that Foreman was going to destroy Ali too. Before the fight, Gene Kilroy walked into Foreman's dressing room. Moore was pacing back and forth, and Moore said something that still echoes through boxing history. "I smell death in the air." That's what he said. Not victory, not knockout, death. Moore went further. He told Norman Mailer for the book The Fight that he was praying before that bell rang. Not praying for Foreman to win, praying that George wouldn't kill Ali. He said he truly believed it was a real possibility, that Foreman didn't know his own strength. Think about what that means. Moore had trained Ali, fought Ali, lost to Ali, and now he was standing in the opposite corner genuinely afraid that his current fighter might kill his former student. Then the fight started and Moore saw something that nobody else in Foreman's corner understood. Ali went to the ropes on purpose, leaned back, let Foreman pound on him, round after round. The crowd was screaming. Foreman's corner was celebrating, but Moore wasn't celebrating, because Archie Moore knew the rope a dope. He'd used it himself his entire career. Fighting on the ropes, conserving energy, letting your opponent punch himself out. It was Moore's own technique being used against Moore's own fighter, by a man Moore had once tried to train. Moore told Thomas Hauser years later exactly what happened. Ali convinced Foreman he couldn't hurt him. Ali had him thinking and worrying, and George wasted too much ammunition on Ali's arms. When George got tired against a skilled warrior like Ali, that was the beginning of the end. 8th round. So Foreman went down, and the whole world changed. Moore stood in that corner and watched Ali take back the heavyweight championship using a strategy that Moore himself had pioneered. The student hadn't just beaten the teacher. The student had taken the teacher's own weapon and used it against the teacher's champion. After the fight, Foreman fired Moore. Fired the whole team. The loss broke something inside Foreman that took years to heal. But Moore had seen enough. He'd seen the full circle. He'd watched a loud kid refuse to wash dishes in his gym. He'd fought that kid and lost. He'd trained another monster to destroy that kid. And then he'd watch that kid use his own style to win. Archie Moore spent his final years in San Diego. He ran a program called Any Boy Can, teaching kids from the streets the same lesson reform school taught him. That discipline is worth more than talent. That respect comes before everything. He told his family that Ali was the most remarkable fighter he'd ever seen. Not the most disciplined, not the most respectful, but the most remarkable. Because Ali broke every rule Moore believed in and still became the greatest. Moore washed dishes in reform school and waited 15 years for his title shot. Ali refused to wash dishes and became champion of the world in 4 years. It haunted him. Not with bitterness. With wonder. Moore understood something about Ali that most people never figure out. The rules that save ordinary men don't apply to extraordinary ones. Moore followed every rule and became a legend. Ali broke every rule and became a god. Archie Moore died on December 9th, 1998 in a San Diego hospice. He was 84 years old. The all-time knockout record he set still hasn't been broken. His reign as light heavyweight champion still hasn't been matched. He is the only fighter in history who shared a ring with both Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali, and he carried the weight of Ali's greatness with him every single day until the end. Archie Moore waited 15 years for his title shot, washed dishes in reform school, fought over 200 fights before the world gave him what he earned, 132 knockouts, the all-time record, still standing, and the one man who broke all his rules became the greatest fighter who ever lived. Moore trained Ali, fought Ali, then watched Ali use his own style to shock the world in Zaire. 3 collisions with the greatest. 3 times boxing was never the same. If this story hit you the way it hit us, subscribe now. More legends are coming. Drop a comment if you remember the old mongoose. Hit like for a man who earned everything the hard way.